It hit all the right notes, not only accentuating my nostalgia for it, but also being able to set it as its own thing entirely. And with the Mercenaries free DLC out now, and possibly more on the way, maybe separate ways, fucking called it. What up everyone, I am GallantHavoc, and welcome back to Havoc's Horror Show. It's been a while since we last did this, and this time around we're doing something a little different. As some of you know, Havoc's Horror Show is what I do every Halloween season to get into the mood of that spooky, scary, or just plain dark and edgy mood, stuff, way. But that's just the way I like it. I admit I missed last year mostly because of moving in to where I am now. Didn't have space for a studio until I put all this together. In the living room, no less. But it works. But anyway, for this video, this episode, we're going to be talking about something that came out this year, along with a plethora of other things. But in this case, the DLC for Resident Evil 4, Separate Ways. Being a DLC, this review isn't going to be as long as others. But fair warning, I will be talking about some story spoilers for both the main story and the DLC. So without further ado, let's jump into the long-awaited expansion to this awesome remake classic. Separate Ways tells the story of events played alongside the main story, but through the eyes of everyone's favorite Resident Evil femme fatale, Ada Wong. It expands on her mission to acquire something called the Amber, which contains a sample of the Las Plagas parasite, but fetching it is easier said than done. She runs into many a challenge, whether in the form of parasite-ridden people, monsters, death traps, and having to adjust thanks to some interference from Leon in the main story, which is something I really did enjoy about this expansion. Just like the original Separate Ways, the events of the story happen alongside the main campaign and even fill in some blanks too, like where Ada was during those codec-like radio conversations, what else she was up to in areas that we didn't see, or her ringing the church bell that resulted in the classic,
"Where's everyone going? Bingo?"
Separate Ways even gives Luis some more background and screen time, as he was the one who worked out a deal with Ada and her employer, who we will get to get the Amber in exchange for protection, which leads to him crossing paths with Leon as well. Gameplay wise, it plays as you'd expect, with a few adjustments to better suit playing as Ada. For example, you can now use Ada's grapple gun to ascend to hard to reach places, and even use it in combat, whether by quickly getting to a stunned enemy to deliver a deadly kick, or even rip away shields to expose enemies to attacks. On top of that, Ada also has some weapons exclusive to her, such as the Blacktail handgun, the sawed-off shotgun, and the blast crossbow, which is great for crowd control and dealing a lot of damage to enemies. Though I will admit, I didn't use the crossbow that much. Now obviously the expansion is shorter than the main story, but that doesn't take away from its charm. At all, in fact. I'd even say it's slightly more difficult, especially when you reach a point of the game where you fight not one, not two, but 5 goddamn regenerators in quick succession and in close quarters to boot. Christ, that had me sweating. And speaking of the regenerators, Separate Ways also features several new bosses. One of them, and the biggest to boot, being the Black Robe, or Basanta, who is Ramon's left-hand servant, the counterpart to the Verdugo we fight as Leon. We'll get back to the Black Robe in a sec. There's also the Martinico, a giant deformed creature that is seemingly unkillable that pursues you through the halls of a lab on the island part of the game. There's also a fight with Sadler, where you fight him in human form before his transformation at the end of the main game, which you assist Leon with in the expansion. But the Black Robe, who pursues you in the first two parts of the expansion, is by far the best, because of what it actually is. Anyone remember this little conversation in the original Resident Evil 4?
Ah, I have an idea. Since you're here, why don't I introduce you to it? It should keep you busy.
Fans of the original, myself included, often wondered, where's it in the remake? Well, lo and behold,
ugly motherfucker.
I was screaming, it's alive! And that reveal was easily the most pleasant surprise of the expansion. So that being said, there's really only one last thing to talk about, and that is Ada's aforementioned employer. Goddamn motherfucking Albert Wesker. We finally got a fully fleshed out Wesker in the remakes, and he's even more involved in this than in the original. And by the way it ends, we can pretty much 85% say a remake of 5 is on the way. They even added Wesker in Mercenaries, and he is so goddamn fun to play as. He is quite literally that go in and wreck shit character. But anyway, with all that said and done, what did I think of Resident Evil 4 Separate Ways? The remake. Just like the main game, I loved it. It just added on to the charm and success of the main story and offered a different take. And that's all it needed to do, and it did so in a really good, solid manner. And that is why I am giving Separate Ways a gallant rating of 8 out of 10.
Interesting.
It was a nice alternative take on the main story and was great to finally see it remade. Anyway folks, that's about all I have to say about this. So on the next episode of Havoc's Horror Show, we'll return to Resident Evil Village no less, with the Shadows of Rose expansion. So in the meantime folks, I'm GallantHavoc. Wreak some havoc, and I'll see you in the next one.